Blimey. Ooh, this is one out of a jam jar you got here.
Warning. The House of Mystery contains demons, angels, elementals, magicians, wizards, apparitions, adult language, and discussions. If you're easily offended, do not enter the House of Mystery.
All right, then. On with the show.
All right, hello, welcome everyone to the House of Mystery, the John Constantine and Friends podcast. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify. Be sure to leave us a review, rate, and share the show with your fellow DC friends, especially if they enjoy the darker side of DC Comics, because that is what we cover. All right, so today, with me in the House of Mystery is the demon bisexual butler. Hello, David.
Hello, everybody.
All right, you ready?
Yeah, I just had to clear my throat.
Yeah, thank you. Very professional.
Sorry.
Right when I go to you. Yes, hello, Michael. I'm here.
Here, I have a demon in my throat.
That doesn't sound like a good thing. All right,
It's
so
an exorcism, Mike. It's an exorcism.
we're going to have to start over. You completely threw me off. Okay, so in this episode, we're going to cover DC's Harley Quinn romances #1. The official press release says DC is proud to present a selection of 8 stories of rapscallion romance, prodigious passion, an undulating, unbridled affection. Tension builds as Apollo and Midnighter are captured by an unknown alien species who are determined to learn the secrets of their super soldier success. Harley Quinn gets caught in a scintillating. I thought scintillating.
Scintillating.
It says scintillating. I think that might be a typo. Could be wrong, though. Fantasy. What would life have been like if she and Ivy had met in high school? Also featuring Fire and Ice heating things up, fan favorite heroine Power Girl's romantic tale, and the one that we're going to be focusing on, John Constantine's mysterious tryst. That's doesn't seem accurate.
It doesn't,
but maybe they're trying to prevent spoilers.
Exactly.
Possibly, because this issue that we're going to be talking about, taken from DC's Harley Quinn romances #1, the title being Grace, is the particular story we're going to be covering.
Yes.
I'm letting people know now, you should probably read it before you listen, because there's a big reveal that makes the entire story work in a big way, at least for me.
Oh, in a very big way. I mean, you look at that ending and you look at the entire story different.
Oh, yeah. So there will be spoilers throughout our discussion. So push stop now, go read the issue, and then come back and continue to listen. Okay, so as I said, we're going to focus our discussion appropriately on the title that features John Constantine and, drumroll please, Dead Man, titled Grace. It's written by Frank Allen with art from John McCree and the colorist Mike Spicer, which we're big fans of his work. I believe he did the colors for Ram v Swamp Thing run, which we loved, particularly the color palette. That's something we always talked about. And Dave, the color palette for this particular story was fantastic.
Oh, it was. It was a good choice, and it harkened back to a couple of
Didn't it remind you of older Hellblazer?
Yeah, older Hellblazer comics.
Yeah.
And I really liked the fact that it kind of reminded me of some of the issues of Cy Spurrier's run.
Yeah.
Of Constantine.
Well, he was definitely, even though the story was John Constantine was a bit of a plot device, which isn't a negative. That's fine. You can definitely use characters for just that purpose. The story was more or less about Dead Man.
Yeah.
And even though it was about Dead Man, Frank Allen was definitely flexing his Hellblazer fanness.
Oh, especially when Constantine's able to do what he does best.
Yeah. But I'm just talking about the overall style. The art reminded me of earlier Hellblazer runs. The color itself reminded me of earlier Hellblazer runs. And I also liked that he was willing to do something a little different with John Constantine's overall appearance, the aesthetic of John Constantine. And I know many of us Hellblazer fans are really sold on that trench coat.
Yes.
You know, the beige or tan trench coat. But there's always room for a character to wear something else, and I like the look. They gave him, I want to say like tennis shoes almost.
Yes.
Almost like a Tony Stark look, right?
Oh yeah, they gave him like a hipster look.
Yeah, I liked it. I don't know why. I thought originally when I first saw the artwork that was posted to Frank Allen's Twitter account, I want to say 6 months ago, he was previewing that he was going to be writing a Hellblazer story. I had seen the art and I was definitely intrigued. I wasn't sure how this look would translate into a story, but you know what? It doesn't detract. If anything, it kind of feels fresh.
It felt fresh because it's a different look of Constantine that I think would work for him. It kind of reminded me of almost like trying to take the image of Constantine that we know from Hellblazer and the Constantine that we know from Keanu Reeves, where you have a jet black suit, you have the black trench coat instead of the normal tan trench coat. And then you just give it that hipster vibe of it and kind of like an updated look.
Yeah.
And I really dug it. I was like going, you know what? If I imagine this to be Keanu Reeves' Constantine that we might see in the movie, if it ever comes out, I could get behind this. It is something new. It is something fresh.
Yeah. I don't think we always need John Constantine in that typical trench coat, especially since he started in the early Hellblazer runs looking completely different. He didn't wear that.
No, he didn't wear that. And the important thing is like it has to get the essence of Constantine.
That's what matters more than anything.
Yeah, and I definitely say like in every single scene in throughout the panels, you still get that characterization of Constantine.
It felt authentic. It didn't feel faux. Felt Frank Allen definitely understands the character.
Especially when, you have those moments when he's talking to Brandon in quotation marks.
Yeah.
In quotation marks. He's when he's talking to him, he still has that Constantine flair, has his arm around him. Mm-hmm. You still have that almost like that theme that you would expect in Constantine. And with the fresh look, it's almost kind of like I wouldn't mind seeing a series around this look. It could work. It could definitely grow on me.
Why do comic book characters always got to wear the exact same clothes? That doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't. It really doesn't, because like it's one of those things that I think Iron Man, the latest Iron Man, that's what makes Iron Man so special, is because lately what Marvel has done is we're going to show Tony Stark in different suits and even different wear underneath the suit.
Yeah.
And it's really freshened up the character. And I think that DC should take that into account with a lot of their characters nowadays that need that freshening up. Because, like, yes, we need the tried and true images that we expect. Superman needs to be in a red and blue suit,
right?
Cape,
that's different, right? I mean, something like Superman, I feel. I mean, they've tried to change
his suit,
and it's always
but
failed.
But you always, even if they change it, it's the suits that basically, yes, they've changed it, but they still keep the essence of Superman.
Right.
This is the same thing with Constantine. Constantine can still be Constantine, even if he's dressed a different way.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so this story is not only the standout story in the overall anthology series, at least for me, but it's also the heart and soul of the anthology series. I read all of them, and this to me has more of a power, emotionally speaking, behind the narrative than the rest of the titles. And it's funny because it's all under the theme of love of some type.
Yeah.
This one doesn't deal with a direct relationship per se, and yet it manages to be very powerful emotionally.
Oh, yeah.
So DC's Harley Quinn Romances portrays a heart-wrenching tale of supernatural heroes' tragic past and how it may forever haunt him. In Grace, Frank Allen, John McCree, Mike Spicer, and Becca Carey delve into the story of John Constantine and Brandon. And Brandon is just a misdirection. That's not the name of the character. It's actually Dead Man, but you don't find out until the end. So it's an interesting setup. So just really quick to get the plot out there. you start off with John Constantine and Brandon, aka Deadman, fighting a demonic force.
Yes.
And they're going back and forth. They're doing their little thing. And by the time they defeat the enemy, Brandon says, now you've promised to help me with my thing. Can you please assist me? And what you find out is Brandon is going on a date. And now that sounds really stupid. And I kind of rolled my eyes. I was like, what is this? The fucking CW? Like that the whole story revolves around a date.
Yeah.
But what you find out is that it's all about this past love that Deadman had. And you find out that the person he's on the date with, which is her name's Grace, you find out that she's also recently been gotten out of a bad relationship, and that relationship that she was in was with Boston Brand.
Boston Brand, yeah.
So it's really heart-wrenching, especially if you're into, like, if you're a sucker for romances and unrequited love, or, you know, scenarios and situations where two people love each other, but for whatever reason, outside forces are stronger than your love, and it prevents you from being together.
But it's so real. That's the thing.
Yep.
There's an authenticity to it. I mean, like, a lot of the chosen dialogue, when I first read this one, when the reveal happens, it took me by surprise, and then I had to reread it, and I looked at the dialogue differently. And, like, definitely when you see Brandon use, when he basically talks about regret, and he says, you know, regret's a poison. You don't want to live with it. Mm-hmm. It'll burrow inside of you. And then when you get to the big reveal that it's Boston Brand, it's like, oh, that hurts.
Yeah.
Because, like, Boston just wants to actually make sure that Grace was happy. And the whole point was he did love her. It was just the relationship didn't work out. And Boston's a good dude. And he probably, when it broke off originally, the one thing that he regrets is, like, he's constantly thinking still about Grace, who's his ex.
Yeah, and that seems to be, that's probably why I'm drawn to Deadman as a character. I'm drawn to Constantine, but because of his whole like existential like vibe, because that also feels something relatable to me. But then someone like Boston Brand connects with me because I'm a closeted romantic. You know, I am. Unfortunately, I am. And because Boston Brand is also a romantic, how many times do we get these stories? At the center is this love that's just out of reach because he is destined to be alone, trapped as a spirit.
Yes.
That can never truly connect with anyone.
With anyone. And that's the thing, is kind of like, even in his attempts to live a quote unquote normal life, he can never really do it. He can possess a body, but at the end of the day, he's got to let that body go.
Yeah. His whole origin story is sad because it's always been this. There has always been this. I don't think they've ever delved directly into his abuse, but they've always alluded to the fact that he had a very poor childhood. And I believe they've even stated in certain stories that he actually was abused by his father. So this is a person that has had a really bad life and just bad luck. Deadman is probably DC's most heartbreaking hero, you know, with a past that involved, as I said, a troubled childhood and an untimely murder. But through Rama Krishna's blessing, if you can call it that.
If you could call it that.
It was more of a punishment.
Yes.
Boston became the ghastly hero Deadman. And that's always been the center of his most interesting and intriguing stories. No matter how long Deadman has been around, it always comes down to that origin story.
Yes.
And it's a little different than with Batman. Like, and I bring up Batman for obvious reasons here, because he's another character that they always return to the well. His problems all stem from the murder of his parents.
But the thing is, with Deadman, it's a little bit more I want to say nuanced than the tragedy of a moment. The tragedy of Boston Brand, especially when you take into the deal of Ramakrishna that he makes, is about karma. It's about the fact that Boston Brand was not a perfect human being. He wasn't the most nice human person, but he still was a good person down deep inside. And Ramakrishna made him that deal because the deal was that's his karma. His karma is coming back to haunt him, and it makes him dead man, which he will never be happy. He can never be at peace.
Yeah, and that's why it's more nuanced. I 100% agree with your analysis there. It is way more nuanced than Batman, because Batman at least has the opportunity to grow, to evolve, to become a man, to surround himself with tangible friends, tangible loves,
to move on. Boston Brand nope.
cannot move on.
He's not allowed to.
In fact, that storyline we just covered a couple months ago, the Dark Mansion of Love, that's pretty much what the underlining theme was saying, that he cannot move on.
Yeah, and
like
even
it's kind of it's a metaphor for not being able to move on past the lost loves of your life.
Loves of your life.
Because he physically can't move on because he's a spirit. And they even left you with that question mark at the end of that issue. Is this what he's destined to do?
Yeah, because even the spirits in his world are still allowed to move on. They're allowed to go into the light, so to speak.
And
that's
yet he can't.
And yet he is not allowed to.
Yeah, and that's what really makes this particular story so sad and also satisfying, because when you find out, because at first, as I said, you're just reading a story about a guy named Brandon who is being supervised by Constantine outside a coffee shop, waiting for him to be done with his date. And you just see two people talking, and the sadness that you feel the moment you realize he's Boston Brand and that he's talking to the woman that he's in love with. And what makes it worse is that she doesn't say anything bad about her ex.
Yeah.
She talks about how much she loves him, how she hasn't moved on. That's why it's so fucking sad.
Yes.
Because he knows that he could be with her if he was alive.
Yeah, but he has to move on.
Yeah.
And that's the tragedy of it all, is
well, isn't that Dead Man is often portrayed as this lovesick and bit of an emotional victim to his circumstances because of his form, because of what he is. While Dead Man lacks a physical form, it obviously presents significant obstacles to a romantic relationship. And yes, there have been storylines that have explored solutions, and they always seem bizarre. I remember in the first volume of Justice League Dark, the New 52, when they first launched it, the opening volume was actually really well done, in my opinion. But you had Boston Brand jumping into different people, and he was having sex with women. And they were doing it for a reason. There was a reason why he was doing it. But it made you feel uncomfortable because there's that whole thing of consent. You are using someone's body as a puppet and doing as you will with it without their permission, including having sex with someone that this person may not want their bodies to be entangled with.
Yes.
So that's why it also brings up ethical questions. And in later years, they've had Boston Brand, because of the era we live in and the times, which is a good thing. They have changed his stories a bit to where he has a bit of a type of ethics, whereas in years past he would just jump into people and do whatever he wants. Now this idea of not abusing this power and using people against their consent has taken more firmer root in his stories, and this is one of them, because he doesn't even go the distance as Brandon. Have I lost you? I see you typing. So
no, I was looking at the stuff to follow along with you with Brandon, because I'm looking at the comic right now, and some of the stuff, dude, that you're talking about. I'm looking at the panels, And it really sets in with I was thinking to myself, it really sets in about the tragedy of it all, because like, here's Brandon, who is Boston Brand, and he's talking to Grace. And we're talking about how Boston cannot move on, yet here he has this chance to move on. But even in the respect of love and relationships, Boston can't even move on there. He can't move on in life, and he can't move on in love because he can't let go of Grace. He just wants to make sure Grace is happy. And it's like, it really does hit you that basically it is a really sad story about how a guy, or even like in today's world, when relationships, it's really difficult to deal with, regret about any relationship, because it will eat at you till the day you die, just like how it does with Boston. And at the end of the day, when I got to that panel, when you said, did I lose you? It hit me like a bunch of bricks about the emotion that Boston's just going to be stuck like this forever. He can never move on.
Yeah.
And it is really, really sad and tragic.
Yeah.
I mean, even more so than Mansion of Forbidden Love, because Mansion of Forbidden Love, at least when me and you covered it, there was that sense of hope. He's doing the right thing. He's putting up the good fight. But here, it's more. I got to that last page, and when you said, "Did I lose you?" I said, "No, I just think I got really depressed right there, because it was like I felt the emotion of the fact that Boston Brand, the idea that basically regret will eat at him, even past his death,
Even
because
in
he's
death.
death, even in death."
Yeah, which isn't that what they say about ghosts a lot of times, and that's what the Dark Mansion of Love did, and that was that question. You got this idea
You got this idea
that it wasn't so much a curse any longer. It might have started off as punishment or karma because of the things he had done in his past and the way he had acted. He was rather callous, a little chauvinistic. He wasn't a great person when he was working at the circus. And Ramakrishna, you always get this idea that it was a form of karma, that this is what you deserve, and now you'll work for me for the betterment of humanity. But there was that question mark that they presented or posed in Dark Mansion of Love. And it was the idea that he can't move on, not because he's no longer allowed to, but there's something in him now. It's him. There's something wrong with him. He's unable to let go of certain things. And if he did let go of certain things, he would probably be able to go to the light. That's why Dark Mansion of Love was so powerful. And that's those notes of emotion is what they use to strengthen this particular story here.
Yeah.
And that's why I say that this particular story in this anthology book is the strongest because of its messaging, because of its themes, and also because Constantine, I like to see when he's being a nice guy. He didn't really have a reason to be a part of this story.
That is true.
But he was a cool plot device, and it also did a little for him. It shows the softer side of John Constantine. That's something that we don't always see. We know that he is a softie, but oftentimes he doesn't show that vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, as we have said numerous times, he at times has to do the dirty deeds, that no one else wants to do. And because of that, he doesn't always get to show a certain type of feeling towards his fellow colleagues. Whereas in this issue, by the very notion that he is distracting this demonic force that they have to fight outside this coffee shop just so
Boston
Brand can have a date with Grace, says a lot about John Constantine as a person as well.
But also using that element as a parallel, that you have this battle of John fighting this quote unquote demon.
Yep.
And you have Boston fighting this inner demon that is regret.
Yeah.
In essence, basically,
one's an overt narrative. The other strengthens that overt narrative via a metaphor.
And like, it's like, I do like the element that I wish that John was more involved, so to speak,
Yeah.
in the story. But the way he's used in the story makes complete sense why he's here. He's used as that foil to actually show, yes, Boston Brand has his own inner demon that he has to deal with. Meanwhile, Constantine's dealing with a demon just in general.
Yeah.
And it's just the same way of how the battle that Boston's doing. And that's why I like that element in the very end when Constantine tells him, hey, we've both had a really rough day today, haven't we? Yeah. It's kind of like saying, I've fought a demon, you fought a demon. And I like the fact that basically Constantine is used as that almost that perfect person for a buddy who's actually having a rough day when it comes to a relationship. But he's the one, the quote unquote, for I want to say the term I want to use is icebreaker. He's the one that basically just comes in, you know, gives a joke and tells the guy, hey, buck up, you know. Tomorrow's another day, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
Let's go for a drink. Let's go.
I have a question for you, just to switch gears for a second. Do you think that they were purposely subverting our expectations, not just because of the dead man aspect, but by using Constantine as essentially the lead, as they had made us assume? And I think when you pair John Constantine with a nameless character, with an unknown character named Brandon, the audience or the readers assume that the story is going to be about John Constantine, and it immediately gets our thoughts off of Brandon. Certainly, we have questions. Who is this guy? What's their connection? Why are they fighting together? Why does it act like they're old friends? And because you have these questions, you just assume the answer is going to come from Constantine's end, that it's about him. And then you realize that this isn't about John Constantine at all. It's actually all about Boston Brand. And that's why I feel like in order to get the full effect of the story, that's why I suggested people not listen to our show until after reading it, because I feel like if they know that beforehand, it's not going to be as effective, because that's the moment that made me feel like this story was that much better.
Yeah, because this story, the way
it was a subversion. It was the subversion of expectation, right?
Oh, yeah, because it relies on that twist. Mm-hmm. It relies on that reveal. And I think it is very, it's very reliant on, this type of storytelling is really difficult because you got to make sure that emotionally and narratively the reveal happens and you get that emotional punch on the audience off well. You know what I mean? They have to get it to land that punch, because if you do it too soon, it ruins the effect of the ending. If you do it too late, it's almost kind of like, well, what was the point of that?
Yeah, I almost feel like this should have been its own issue. I think
it's tough because, dude, doing a story like this, I don't know if you could carry it more than 15 pages. Because
that's a valid argument, Dave. I don't disagree, because I was about to bring that up. That was the question I was about to ask you. Do you think this type of story just works as a short story? Because the same thing can be said about short films. Many times people feel like, oh, you should have really expanded this story out to be a feature. But oftentimes, if you know what you're doing when you design a short story, there really isn't room to flesh out, because the entire concept, or the original concept, was made to be told in a very short form aspect. So the same thing can be said about this very story. Would it have worked if they would have given us a full issue, or do you think this is the best way to make this story effective? At least with the intent that Alan was obviously trying to go with, which was to kind of pull the rug from out under us. If you're wanting to get the reveal to be the pull the rug moment, mm-hmm. I don't think it could. Could you do a Dead Man story centered around this type of narrative of living with regret? Well, yeah.
And not knowing
it was Dead Man? Or just the idea of...
That's the thing. Not knowing that it's Dead Man? That could be tough.
Yeah.
That could be really tough, because you're... you're going to actually have to explain when you get to the reveal that basically it's Deadman. Well, why did we care about Brandon?
That's true. Like, how do you even sell a comic book like that?
How do you sell a comic book like that?
Because the reason why this story even flashed off the page for me or jumped off the page at me is because of Constantine's involvement.
Yes.
I believe even the synopsis says Brandon and John Constantine. So if you didn't have John Constantine, would you even be excited about a story about some character named
Schlub
Brandon?
named Brandon.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's kind of like if you try to expand it too much, then you run into the risk of the audience basically losing disbelief in your story.
I mean, it still works. I forgot what's the there's a terminology for what I'm about to describe, but Brandon, Boston, brand. I mean, it works.
It works.
There's a name for when writers do that, when they take a name and what am I thinking of? You know what? I can sit here for 20 minutes and not think of it, but there is a terminology for that type of thing. I forgot.
It's
a form of semiotics. I'm just not sure what
I
the
can't think of
exact
it right
name
now.
is. But either way, I feel like ultimately this was a really strong issue.
Yeah. It's a fun issue.
The issue itself as a whole was fairly good.
Yeah.
But this particular story was the best. It was well done. It captured for the most part, the characterizations and mannerisms of John Constantine appropriately. It does intrigue me. I hope, or I should say Alan as a writer has never been on my radar. Now he is.
Now he is.
And the sad thing, Dave, is he was the one that was supposed to write the Round Robin Constantine and the Demon Vacation from Hell series.
Yes, he was.
And now after reading this and how nuanced he gets with certain emotional themes, I get angry now. I'm like,
you want to kill like some fans that basically vote. Why would I vote for that, Mike? I'll vote for Green Lantern.
Yeah. But at least now I have a new writer on my radar. And if he tackles anything else in this realm, I will definitely read it. Shit, man. He obviously understands Deadman as well. Yeah. I wouldn't mind if he tackles a Deadman storyline. It's been a while now that how long has it been since we've had a Deadman-eccentric story that is centered around him, not where he pops in and assists as a co-star or a guest star.
Well, you can't even, you know what the weird part is?
I think it was Dark Mansion of Love, wasn't it?
But even with Dark Mansion of Love, it wasn't really centered on Deadman.
Yeah, but he was
he was front and center, the main character.
He was a lot of the plot motivation. There was maybe he wasn't actually. Hold on.
If you think about it,
he was the encompassing theme. He kept the aesthetic of the story together, and it revolved around some of his actions, but the story itself was not about him. You're right. Yeah. I remember now. But it was still a Deadman title. Yeah. When's the last time we've gotten that?
Not in a long time. That's why I'm excited about Night Terrors. Night Terrors should be really good because that's going to be Deadman all over the goddamn place.
Yes, but it's also not just Deadman. I'm talking about a Deadman title. I think it's been a while.
It's been a while because
almost 10 years, I think.
I would love someone at least at DC to try to give us a Deadman title because back in the 70s and 80s, and I hate harping back on that era because I know that makes me feel old, but back in the 70s and 80s, they did a bunch of issues on Deadman.
That's why I asked Dave a few moments ago, do you think the reason why we don't get a lot of Deadman stories is because of the whole consent thing?
I do think that partially is it because the idea of Deadman going around and essentially taking over a person's body is a little squeaky.
Yeah, because no matter what ethical, philosophical perspective you want to take, all of them consider possessing someone's body without their consent would be considered unethical because it violates the very general principles of autonomy.
Well, think about it, Mike. I mean, Think of how Wonder Woman 1984.
I knew you were going to bring that up because I was about to as well.
Well, because that's
got
the
a lot
one
of complaints.
that got a lot of complaints. Why the hell did Steve Trevor take over that poor man's body?
But honestly, would that dude really care though? I mean, come on. Gal Gadot was just working.
He was
it.
banging him.
He doesn't have that memory, but he could smell his dick.
Well, exactly. But it's
Smell
still
something. I don't remember. Why am I pissing weird? I don't remember having sex.
I don't remember having sex. Why do I wish I could remember?
Why does my penis smell like Amazonian?
But like, I'll never forget that whole moment. That idea made Wonder Woman feel squeaky.
It was. Listen, I'm not overly sensitive, but that moment in Wonder Woman did feel a little strange.
And
I was like, that's a little weird.
You weren't the only one.
Yeah, well, I know. I saw
felt
people
that way.
I felt people actually, or I saw people on the internet actually offended. Like, what the fuck are you doing
What the hell
in
are
this
you
day and
doing?
age?
And why, Diana, are you looking at the guy and basically just eyeing him up like down as if saying, "Yeah, I did you."
Oh, you mean at the end?
At the
Yeah,
end.
that was creepy.
I
dude.
was like, Diana, no.
There was a lot of what the fucks in that movie. There was a lot of moments you're just like, what the hell's happening? So yeah, bringing it back to Dead Man, possibly just the era we're in. You know, we look at things a little differently. I'm not saying we're oversensitive, but we do question certain things now in stories that in years past we're like, yeah, fuck it. It makes sense. We'll just do it. Now you have to think about the consequences. You know, and what it's actually saying. And when you have a character that can just take over someone's body and do whatever they want with it, it does present those questions, those ethical questions. And that's why I say, Dave, that's where that's the heart of the story right there.
That's the heart of the story.
You actually tell a story about the ethics of being Dead Man. I'm not saying you go and teach people, you know, this is the morality of Dead Man, lesson 1. I'm saying you use that as a foundation as to why Dead Man doesn't go after the one he loves, why he doesn't pursue it, and what it means to live as an entity that doesn't have the consent to be anyone other than himself.
Can you imagine a series like that being written? How honestly, it'd be fantastic.
If someone with a philosophical mind wrote it, it would be amazing.
It'd be amazing.
I think someone like Ram V probably could do a good job because he did a lot of philosophical stuff.
Oh,
with,
imagine the psychedelicness that
with
he would
Swamp
throw
Thing.
into it.
Yeah. I think it just comes down to finding the right writer who understands the character and who can also write philosophically.
Tom Taylor to the rescue.
Oh, please. All right. You know, David, this brings us to our final thoughts. I'm pretty sure people are well aware of how I feel about it. My RMD score is 84%.
I'm with you there. I actually graded this particular story a 89, but the overall issue I gave like an 85, like with all the stories and everything.
Mm-hmm. So wait,
because I really liked it.
This story, Grace, is what?
89.
89. Okay.
And like, because it is the strongest story out of all of them. And one of the things I really loved about this story was like all the other stories dealt with the idea of relationships and love in I want to say a lighter tone.
Mm-hmm.
This one tackled it in a more mature tone. Actually, and because of that, it felt more authentic to me. Dealing with not the darker side of relationships, but basically the pitfalls of relationships is really important. Not just showing, like the grandiose, the romantic side of relationships. You got to show also the negative side of relationships, about bringing in the ideas of regret and broken relationships.
Yeah.
I thought was genius.
Yeah, it was good. Definitely well worth the read for sure. Okay, this brings us to the end of our discussion. Be sure to check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/RainBaneDigital. And when you pledge $1 or more a month, you'll gain access to our companion show. It's titled The Oblivion Bar. And basically it's what we do here on this particular podcast here, but it's a little more casual. And we just get into things that we don't have time to get into on the regular show. We bitch and moan a little bit about DC Comics. I believe our latest discussion, we got into the ins and outs of the upcoming event series titled DC Night Terrors.
Yes.
Which, as you mentioned, Dave, is focused a lot on Deadman as well as Zatanna. So we're actually going to be covering that, but we got into the details during our latest Oblivion bar. So go to patreon.com/Rayman Digital and pledge. It's only $1 or $10 for the year. It helps us, helps you. Thank you, David.
Thank you.